Falun Gong isn't all bad, but it does brainwash people. Yes, it brainwashes people and might not always be a bad thing, and it gives people a bit of guidance, it gives them a bit of focus, but then the deeper stuff is bullshit. Master Lee is not a Buddha, because Buddhas are made up. It's superstitious bullshit. At best you can have a person who says some truths. Master Lee talks a lot of shit, and has talked a lot more shit in the past. Perhaps he's a bit tamer nowadays, because he knows people outside of the group are listening and will report it. Also, condemning all critics as being somehow connected to the Chinese Communist Party is pathetic. Wake up and smell the coffee. Taking your children and putting them into a meditation group could be interesting, sure. But it's still brainwashing. It's still manipulation. It's still like, hey, this is how things work. There's a mirror inside your head that's facing downwards. And through these practices of generating and focusing the energy through your body, you can turn that mirror facing upwards, which is the key to enlightenment. It's bullshit. Don't get me wrong, I don't really see there being any great benefit to any other alternatives, except when you get some kind of psychological benefit, which may well, help you in some way. Oh, you've managed to relieve your depression and get out of a particular mode of thought. Okay. But then you're not taking your diabetes medicine because you believe that you can cure diabetes. Whoops. So there are pluses and minuses, as well as a great many things you might well take on board which aren't necessarily true, such as claims to do with large conspiracies against you personally and people like you, conspiracies against the Buddhic leader, conspiracies that generate large numbers of critics, and these critics are clearly in, computer laboratories over in Beijing, because where else would they be? They can't possibly be people with more questions and answers you might not like to certain hard questions. No, they're clearly working for the communists. And if not for the communists over in China, then they're certainly affiliated in the West, perhaps paid in some way. They're shills. Or if not for that, then for the big pharma. Basically, the pharmaceutical industry, they don't want people learning how not to be medicated and how to use modern science to the full degree to ensure a longer and healthier life. No, so we must be part of the conspiracy, and we must be working instead of for the Communist Party, we must be working for Big Pharma. Where's the evidence? And you use arguments which are spread over Falun Gong websites, which include claims that, because the medical system and the overcharging in the United States is so fucked up, it must be the same everywhere. And therefore Big Pharma must be coming for you, even if I'm in the UK and we're not too bad over here. Friends of mine in Australia, in France, in other parts of the world, they must be in on the plot too, even though their medical systems are in some ways even better than the UK. But in any case, despite this first world luxury and the lack of bullshit that Americans tend to suffer in many cases, I must be part of the conspiracy. Since we couldn't find enough evidence or reasons to say anything which proved he was a communist, we're going to try and say that he's a hardline evil capitalist working for Big Pharma, or fooled by Big Pharma, or fooled by the communist conspiracy, or fooled by any number of other demons under the floorboards. It's bullshit. So at the base level, taking on a few practices probably isn't bad. I could say the same for practically any belief, religious or otherwise. And a religious movement or spiritual movement like Falun Gong is fairly disorganised, so most people won't get too deep in the conspiracy theories or won't take it as being part of a major religion like you would perhaps in Christianity, Islam or even Hinduism. But in any case, you will end up with those people, especially those passionate people on the internet, who are always nose deep into the anus of Master Lee and the conspiracy theories that he generates and his people prefer to generate about China, about the pharmaceutical industry and many other things for that matter. And they will basically believe so many remarkable things. Now, many of those ideas are probably true. There is a problem with big pharma in many parts of the world, especially the United States and many parts of the third world, manipulating prices, and of course that should be curtailed. I think that's fair, don't you? That you shouldn't have rampant, over-the-top capitalism. The same should be said of Chinese abuse of their critics. Certainly, yes, if it goes too far, which, let's face it, curtailing their freedom of speech is going quite far, then, of course, yes, that's a bad thing. But how does them being bad, even if they were as bad as you claim, how would that prove your belief to be the ultimate good? You don't prove the ultimate good by saying we're not as bad as those things there if we look at them in a selective way and point out their worst characteristics. You don't confirm the validity or truth of Falun Gong by playing for sympathy, by talking about how many people have died over in China, considering, many thousands, perhaps even millions of people who've practiced similar things to Falun Gong have died. Due to old age, mostly. Due to death in prison, sometimes being beaten up and injured by the police. That happens over in China more than you might expect. And yes, I think it's valid to say that China does have issues, like a huge population and a huge number of deaths every year. Something like, was it like 40 million people dying every year? That's not genocide, that's just people dying. But I guess we should believe that over the last decade or two, there's been people siphoned off, hidden away, off the books, who've had their organs harvested. And we just haven't noticed. And when you say, well, it must have been this person because we haven't found them, or this person because they went missing. Have they started a new life? We don't know. Have they been sent to one of the many prison camps over in China? We just don't know. Have they had their organs harvested? Well, I don't think they have. Maybe, though. I mean, it's possible. China has a bit of a history with organ harvesting going back into the 60s and 70s and 80s, and the diminishing numbers there. And in fact, many people now, Chinese culture is progressing where people don't have the same superstitions as they used to. So the idea that China is harvesting these organs and then selling them at ridiculous rates to rich businessmen, it's an interesting idea, an interesting conspiracy theory. But unfortunately, the documentaries that Falun Gong and relating supporters, their sympathisers, very often put out, they'll talk to a doctor or a person who claims to be a doctor, who doesn't presently live in China, and they all say, oh right, yes, when I was working over there, we got the organs, two, like livers or something from another hospital, and they were available at that time. The only way they could have been available is if they came from a person within a very short period, within a day, less than a day. And that doesn't prove millions. It doesn't even prove thousands. There's a lot of reaching, a lot of suggestion. And you know what? I wouldn't put it beyond the Chinese Communist government to euthanize the old, especially in their political critics, in prison camps or in normal prison for that matter. But in any case, without solid evidence, isn't it going too far to assume the case and believe everything you read on a Falun Gong banner or in their leaflets? Their remarkable claims also, by the way, from a variety of journalists who've spoken about China and how it's really National Socialism now. And I can see what they mean. And I understand the point because I understand politics to a large degree. I've looked into politics for many years. And I can agree with a great many points. But then I see them reaching. This is the problem. I see people making great claims about, okay, there's been a major issue here. How do you know? Well, back in the day, blah, 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 this situation here, and this suggestion here, and this person who claims to be a witness here, and we still, even with all of that, don't have the evidence for vast numbers of people being spirited away and being kept in poor conditions in order to have their potentially then damaged organs used for wealthy Chinese businessmen. Call me sceptical, because I am, but call me cynical when I say I would rather see more evidence on this and a cohesive argument, less reaching to make the arguments and the evidence seem more compelling. And so much of it is anecdotal evidence. Is it any wonder that I doubt the claims?